Okay, good morning. We're going to go ahead and get started with our parent coffee this morning. I see that it's 9 o'clock on my watch. I'm pretty sure most of you or all of you know me. I'm Sara Carlson. I'm the director of the beginning school. And first, I want to just tell you thank you for coming and taking some time to chat with us today. We did move the time to 9 o'clock, so we figured everyone would be able to get home or get to work before um, after dropping off from carpool. So starting at 8:15 when it's not in person is really a little bit tricky for us sometimes. I will also let you know, just if you have questions or comments or something you would like to see me address today, the chat is open and I have set the chat that it would just go straight to me. So I will try to keep checking that. And Mrs. Gismondi is also on the call. So if you get booted off for some reason and can't get back on, Mrs. Gismondi is on mute manning the phone. So you can give her a call and she would be happy to help you. So it is the springtime, and I want to talk about the spring and kind of segue that into what I wanted to chat with you about today. We love the spring and beginning school. The children are, of course, learning the seasons and all of the characteristics that go along with the seasons. And I want to give a shout out to all of the parents who donated time to prepare things for our spring celebration and send things in for the classroom celebrations. And for those hardy souls who joined us on Zoom, it had to be the windiest day ever that day before spring break, and we were trying to go outside and invite parents to join our celebration. So I know it wasn't the best video quality, but thank you for participating and thank you for joining us. We had some, in my class, I know we had some kites go all the way over the building and we were able to retrieve all of them, but it was a really interesting day. And on a typical non-COVID year, we would have invited you into help us with that celebration and to join us outside and to join us in our classrooms. So I want to tell you a little bit about what we do in the spring since you're not here. We like to have fun in beginning school. And at one meeting in the fall, I introduced some of my staff. Miss Fong is our newest staff member at the beginning school. And she is the staff member who greets your child every day coming in. And she takes their temperature. She says good morning. She even has little good morning rituals with some of the children. And Miss Fong is just a ball of energy and a whole lot of fun. So if or when your child comes home today and saying, Miss Fong scared me today, it's probably true. So I brought a visual. If you were here in person, I would have you in the common room and I would have this box. So this box behind me was the Jack in the Box. And this morning it was a Miss Fong in the box. So picture your children walking into school, walking into our common room. Mrs. Misi was taking their temperature and Mrs. Means was standing by the box. So she could whisper to Miss Fong, who was inside the box. She's not in there now. No one's going to scare you. Whispering who was coming so we wouldn't pop out on anybody who might be particularly scared or anyone who looked like they weren't in a really happy mood today. So here we go. Here she comes out of the box. Good morning. And they jumped and we had a really great time this morning. And she popped out with her thermometer because that's what they're used to seeing her with every morning. So we did have a Miss Fong in the box. And for a particular child this morning, she popped out and said, happy birthday. She said, good morning. And the greatest part of this was watching some of the children in room 1 standing at the doorway, just inside the doorway, to watch as friends came by and Miss Fong would pop out of the box. So we do like to have a little bit of fun at beginning school. And there are a lot, these things happen on a daily basis and you just don't get to see them at school. But we really enjoy watching the children have fun reactions. But I want to tell you, on a more serious note, the real reason that we love spring, and it was really fun to have Miss Fong peeking out the window and popping out with her thermometer to do a temperature check. But the real reason we love the spring and beginning school is we get to enjoy the students as children who have grown so much. So I often say, as an educator, I love the week after winter break. So we've had children in school since August, and then we don't see them for 2 weeks, and they come back and you're like, wow. It's just like if your grandparents don't live in town and they come to visit and they're like, wow, look how much you've grown. Well, we see that too. After 2 weeks, we see, wow, look how much you've grown. And the same thing in the spring. Wow, they're just where we want them, and we get to enjoy them the last few weeks of school, and then we'll watch them go on their way. And I always look at it like this: just when we get them where we want them, it's time for them to move on because they've gotten everything they can get out of our class. Most of you know that I'm also a member of the teaching staff, which is what I dearly love about my job. So right now I have someone covering for me in the Ladybugs class with Mrs. Brown, but I really enjoy watching the growth that they have. And we're just looking at these kids like, wow, look how well they're functioning. Look how well they're writing. Look how well they're starting to read. And then they're going to move on. And that's kind of the reason we love the spring, and particularly because last year we were robbed of that opportunity. So we got up to March, and it was right when we were going to enjoy all this growth and learning that takes place in the last part of school. And we didn't get to witness that other than online. And that was really difficult for us. So I wanted to address that as a reason we love the spring, and kind of use the temperature check as maybe a little bit of an analogy. So we had parent conferences right before spring break, and I do want to mention why we did move those from the original date. It wasn't only to be more convenient with families with lower school children. We are moving to a quarter system next year in beginning school. So instead of getting the 3 progress reports each year, you will get 4 progress reports each year. So we didn't have that set up. That needs to be set up online before the school year starts, because it's very difficult to change midstream. But we wanted to make it consistent with the other divisions on campus. So if you have children in lower school, beginning school, or upper school, we all have quarters dates that end the same time, and you get your report cards about the same time. So we're going to do that in beginning school for 2 reasons. First reason, to be consistent with the other divisions. But the second reason, and I think that it's more helpful to parents, to give you a little bit more opportunity to see the progress reports that are coming out online. So starting next year, we will be moving to the quarterly reports, and you will still receive your trimester report at the end of April. So that will be coming out, and you will receive an email when that's available in your parent portal. And as always, if you have any trouble accessing the records, please call the office and we will help you do that. And also, if you have questions when you are getting a report card coming out and there's something that you have a question about, please don't hesitate to directly contact the teacher. We are here to help you, and we want to have those conversations with you. So in relation to a progress report or a report card, we don't give grades in beginning school. And I've used this story, and if you have a lot of children and you've been around me a long time, you've probably heard most of my stories, but I think this one really fits here. I have 2 children who are 5 years apart in age, and the younger one got his first report card that had grades. And he picks it up and he hands it to his brother, and he says, "What are the good letters?" We don't give grades because they don't understand what that means. Assigning something that's numeric or assigning something that's an A, B, C, or D. They're just learning what A, B, C, or D are, that they're symbols that represent sounds. So we don't give grades, but we do let you know kind of how they're doing. But think of that report card as a checklist, kind of that temperature check. So when you take a temperature in the morning, and with COVID, we've done this a lot. The temperature is just for that moment. Here's how many degrees this thermometer says that your body temperature is. And we know that it can be indicative of a fever for illness. It could be COVID-19. It could be something else. And with children, it's more than likely not COVID-19. But regardless, your child could come in at 8 o'clock in the morning and be perfectly healthy. And then by 9:30, you're getting the phone call, you have a fever, we're not feeling well. So a report card is just a temperature check. And it's one indicator, and there are things that you can measure. So think about a checklist. It's really easy to measure. Can your child count to 20? Yes or no? You just put that on the report card. Can you write your numbers up to 10? Can you identify letters? Can you identify sounds? And they're the quantifiable things that are important building blocks for school, but they're also just the quantifiable things that perhaps are only just a part of what we're looking for. Your children are individuals, and they don't fit a checklist. Their individual growth and development is the range of normal is so wide. You think about, okay, you have children, you have a curriculum, but then the range of normal behavior. And I'll use this example just from my own children. Again, they're 5 years apart, and one of my children started walking at just barely 10 months, and he's running, and I thought he's way too short to be walking and running. My other child was walking at about 14 months. And it was really interesting that, okay, one was walking so early, we thought, what's wrong? And then we thought, oh, the other one's not walking at all. Like, what's wrong? If you looked at my children today, you would not be able to tell which one was walking at 10 months and which one was walking at 14 months. That evened out, and they both walk like normal people should walk. So it's the same thing if your child is 3 and about to turn 4, and the teacher's reporting that, she's only identifying 14 letters. That's okay. And you start thinking, but I know at home we do the letters and she gets all the cards and we know, and it's not on the report card. Don't worry about that. This is, again, it's that temperature check. It's that, what can your child do today in the context of sitting with the teacher? And if your child's doing more at home, that's great. But don't feel like it's the teacher judging and saying, well, no, your child doesn't know their letters. This is developmental. And I'll kind of liken it to many things that we learn. We learn things in stages, and we start understanding things in stages. So when we start to teach them about clocks, and we have those little Judy clocks in the classroom where they're putting the time on the clock, and they say, okay, this is 9 o'clock. But then they go home and they look at a clock, if you even have an analog clock in your home, and they don't remember that it's 9 o'clock. So next time we get out the Judy clocks, we're going to practice 9 o'clock again. And because you have young children, if you say, okay, well, it's 9 o'clock now and we're going to recess at 10 o'clock, they're going to ask you in 10 minutes, is it 10 o'clock yet? And they're going to ask you in 20 minutes, is it 10 o'clock yet? Because they don't have a sense of time. So they're going to continue learning to read a clock and tell time. And then when they get to about 2nd grade, it's going to make sense. One parent that I talked to earlier this week just said that a family is planning a trip to Legoland. And he gets in the car and says, are we going to Legoland? Been told it's in the summertime. They know the date that they're going. So, using a system like, how many more times do I wake up? How many wake ups to go till we go? And if you tell them too early, they're going to ask you every day. So again, just that as one example of teaching something that takes a while for them to grasp and understand. It's okay. Think of the report card as the temperature check. And going back to the fact that children are individuals, a checklist isn't going to fit every child. If you have more than one child, you know this. You know that they develop at different rates and at different times and places. So I wanted to talk really about 5 different areas. And those are problem solving, language and expression, how children react to setbacks, their social interactions, and their stamina. Those are all things that really don't fit in an easily worded line item on a report card. And these are things that require discussion. And these are things that are on a continuum. So just like the range of normal for when they start to walk, or when they start to talk, or when they start to do things independently, and the same works with our academics. They are on this continuum and they will get there. Children who you think, as teachers, we think, oh my gosh, this is going to be a really big uphill battle this year. We're looking at these children today and saying, oh my goodness, I can't believe the change in this child from the beginning to the end. And many of our students who are going on to kindergarten next year, they have the preschool form of senioritis. They are ready to move on, and we just see it. They are mature. They're ready to go. They're ready to get a bigger playground. They're big. They're just ready to move on. Our children who are in the caterpillars and the honeybees are 4 or turning 4, and they are ready to move on to the next level of curriculum. Just like, just again, another personal story, maybe this could be, an analogy that could be helpful for some of you. Those of you who know me personally know that this is my last year as a Meadows parent, and my youngest is graduating. And so I've been asked by people, friends and family, well, how are you feeling about that? You're going to be an empty nester. And I really have given that a lot of thought. And I really feel like it would be difficult and it would be sad, except it's not, because he is so ready to move on. He's a senior at the Meadows. His senioritis is like, okay, I'm ready to move on. And he's gaining every possible morsel of information that he can get from his classes. In fact, yesterday at lunchtime, I had to talk to him because I'm making an arrangement for college, and because he's in school a day and I have more access to a phone, we were working on something together. Anyway, I'll spare you the details of that. But as we were working on this, I thought, if he has to stay with me 1 minute longer, I'm not going to be able to get anything for him. But the reason I mentioned that story is because, I probably could get you a pass to go late to your next class. He says, no, Mom, that's my favorite class. I don't want to miss anything in that class. And that's kind of how we hope your children are feeling right now. We're hoping they feel like they're not missing class. We want every minute with your children to give them everything that we have left. While, if they're 3-year-olds in our caterpillars, they are so ripe for learning. They finally can, everybody can, they sit nicely, they listen to the teacher, they know how to go get a crayon if they're missing a gray, they know what to do. We want to give them every last bit we can before they're ready to move on. So one of the things we talk about is that's maybe not so quantifiable is how they solve problems. And I mention this often to parents, and these are the things that work for us. When we're talking about problems, we're talking about, I make my K backwards every time, or I'm not sure if mom is picking me up early today, or I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do. If they just have little problems, or children who have little problems. So we talk about them. Is this we acknowledge their problems and we acknowledge their emotions. So if someone comes in crying, we have a student who comes in, sometimes she's forgotten her mask, and she would cry when she forgot her mask. And then finally, the last time she forgot her mask, she came right in, walked past where she would go to class. She walked up to the office to Mrs. Gismondi and said, I don't have my mask, but it's not a problem. I'm not crying. I know you have masks in the drawer. And she can walk to that drawer and get them. So we acknowledge that it's okay to cry and be upset. If you forgot how to make a K, that's a problem for a child. If you forgot who's coming to pick you up, that's a problem. But we talk about solving it. Is this a crying problem? Or is this a raise my hand and ask my teacher problem? Or is this a problem we can solve? My favorite problem that I think I've ever helped a child to solve was a problem with ketchup. This was several years ago. At lunchtime, her ketchup kept falling off of her hamburger at lunch on hamburger days. And this was tears. And I would, you have to laugh because they're little kids and it's really a lot of fun. But if you think about how big a problem that is, I want ketchup. I don't know how to fix this. So we finally said, look, honey, you have a spoon. Let's pick up the ketchup and put it back on your hamburger and spread it. And the day she raised her hand, waited till Mrs. Carlson got to the lunchroom and said, my ketchup fell off. I solved my problem. It's empowering to children. You can do this at home. You can say, how do I solve the problem? Crying isn't going to solve this problem, but it's okay to cry. But now let's talk about how we solve the problem. And if they get hurt, often the question that we'll ask them if they're crying and we're not sure why, are you hurt? And if the answer is no, we give them a minute to gain their composure. Something I've learned from Mrs. Brown is going to the bathroom and putting water on your face. That solves nearly every problem, or I'd say at least 50% of the problems. But is this a problem we can solve? So if they're hurt, is this a Band-Aid problem or an ambulance problem? And then they kind of giggle, or Miss Marino will say, hey, you skinned your knee. Do we need to go on Amazon and order a new knee? And if they're not really hurt, they laugh at that, but it's really empowering. They can say, so we have children who will go to Miss Marino and say, I hurt my knee, but I don't need you to order one on Amazon. I just need to clean it, or I just need to put a Band-Aid on. So when teachers are talking to you about these issues with your children, if they're saying, well, your child is having a hard time solving problems, it's not an attack. It's just, here's where we are in this continuum of development. And in order to be a successful person and a successful student, you need to learn how to solve problems. Another issue that comes up in conference is language expression and speech. We learn more about our students by listening to them talk and listening when they think you're not listening. So if I'm sitting at my table in my classroom and I'm working with individual kids and I have my ear to the rest of the class, I hear what they're saying to each other, and it's fascinating to hear how they express their needs, how they express their desires and their problems. So concerns that we have with children, if they don't have expressive language, if they're unable to speak and communicate effectively, if they can't communicate their needs, they can't communicate their problems, using words. And so you'll often hear teachers say, and you'll hear parents say this as well, use words, or we'll praise them. We'll say, thank you for using words. Thank you for using words to tell me what you need. And when children are developmentally behind in speech, it's just a concern that we bring up to parents. So we will say, your child is not developing language typically for other children at this age. Again, knowing that that range is really wide and knowing that not everyone is going to be the same. But that's where teachers are great for being observers and giving you information. They're not telling you that there's something wrong with your child. We're not licensed to diagnose learning disabilities. We're not licensed to diagnose neurological conditions. Although I do swear by this, I do swear that Mrs. Gismondi, who will swear she is not a physician, she can diagnose like certain infections in children because she's seen it 100 times. She'll say, okay, you might want to call your doctor today and say you need a urinalysis because your child never has an accident and probably might have a UTI. And she just knows that, and we joke about that, or say, well, this is, maybe strep, these are the symptoms. Again, we're not doctors, we can't tell you this. So we're not telling you your child has a problem, we're just telling you this is what we notice. You may want to ask your doctor, but I could swear by Mrs. Gismondi being able to diagnose things pretty accurately, because she sees it over and over and over again. But we just want to let you know, if your child is unable to express a need, like if your child is upset about something and can't tell us, if we didn't observe it, it's really hard for us to know. Sometimes they're upset about something that happened at home, particularly if you have a pet and the pet is sick, or there's a problem with the pet, or they've recently lost a pet. Those are things that really affect them deeply, and if they don't know how to express that, it's very much more difficult for us to help them. Or if you have a child, I have a pencil here, and a child, the pencil point broke, and they are sitting there crying. Usually the teacher can walk over and say, okay, your pencil's broken, but then we'll practice. What do you say? You can raise your hand and say, Mrs. Gross, I need another pencil, or Mrs. Gross, my pencil needs to be sharpened. But if children are unable to do that, it's difficult for them to get through a day. And something that I particularly like to praise children for is if they have a problem and they won't tell us, if they come home and they tell you. It's never offensive to tell a teacher, we had a problem that you may not know about. You can call the teacher, you can email the teacher. We just want that communication. So for example, if your child has a problem and just keeps it bottled up inside all day long, and they finally get home and they tell you about it, and you just want to know what happened, reach out to the teacher. The teacher may already know about it, and maybe you have an email that you hadn't seen yet, or maybe the teacher didn't know about it. But all that we're typically going to say is, to your child, you know what? You had a problem, and I'm so proud of you. You went home and told dad. You went home and told mom. And let us know those things. We can help. For those children who don't express themselves verbally very well, if you find something out that's going on, or you just have a question about something your child is saying, ask us. But again, we will practice, just like we practice problem solving, we'll practice speech. So when a child has a need and we see the need, again, the simplest things are problems. My pencil is broken. You say, okay, practice saying, Mrs. Gross, my pencil point is broken. And we actually rehearse those things and have them say it. And those are things that you can do with children at home. Where we do see issues with children, sometimes if they have a speech delay that isn't getting better over time, that would be something that you would want to pursue a little bit more, to see if they have an issue with their development that needs to be addressed outside of school, or we need to have a further conversation, or we need to have one of our campus resources come. We do have a learning strategist on campus, Dr. Withy, and I wish that people have been able to meet her again, not just on Zoom, but Dr. Withy comes down to our building and watches children and helps with teachers and does some coaching with them, and is available to talk to parents. We want to give you all the information that we can. And then the third point from conference is some of the things that are not, again, on that thermometer that have a number, how your child reacts to setbacks. And that's just a big concern if they don't have that practice. And the extreme example is the kids who go off to college and they've never had a B in their life and they get their first B, or you write a paper and you've been praised for writing papers your whole life, and you get to college and you realize everybody is writing at this level, and then you get a B or a D or on something, or you feel like a failure. How your entire life has gone up to that point, because you've got a few years before you go off to college. And I promise I'm not just mentioning that because my kid is going off to college. My children have had to learn how to react to setbacks. So you didn't get the good grade. Well, what can you do? You can go to your teacher. In preschool, we're not giving grades, but how you react to a setback. And a setback could be as simple as, you're getting out of your seat and going to an area where you're not supposed to go. And your child will come home and thinking, I'm in big trouble. We cry, like, no. And I will tell you this, my own oldest child, he's 23 years old, and we still laugh about this. When he was 3 years old in preschool, he thought he was in big trouble because his teacher asked him to move. He was standing in front of the cabinet. It was snack time. He was standing right in front of the door to the cabinet that got the snacks out. I asked the teacher, because I'm an educator, I know, okay, I'm just going to ask the teacher what really happened. Well, yeah, I just asked him to move over here so I could open the door to get out the snacks. But he really took that very personally because he was really sensitive. If your child is particularly sensitive, they don't react well to setbacks. And so we have to work on those things, assuring them that they're okay, assuring them that this is not the worst thing that can happen. So the younger the child, this can be challenging because, when I was working in the lower school, I could say, okay, this happened. What's the worst thing that can happen because of this? And when they start thinking that way, I'm like, okay, the worst thing that can happen isn't so bad. We can react to a setback. But if your child is overly emotional on any little thing or anything that they see as criticism, help them, help them shape those reactions. Your reaction at home to things that happen really help them to shape things. So how you react to setbacks. Now, they're not going to see everything that goes on in adult personal lives and adult work lives and adult family life. That you, as adults, we work behind the scenes. But when something happens, if you drop something, or you're making dinner and you drop your whole dinner, and how you react to that. If you get really upset, your child sees that. Sometimes you have to laugh it off, and there are situations that are serious, and you do have to take very seriously. But the little things that happen in our lives as adults, when we model behavior for our children, it's okay. One day in our classroom, Mrs. Brown wrote something incorrectly on the board. And a child, raised his hand and said, Mrs. Brown, you did that wrong. And we're laughing. And Mrs. Brown was able to laugh. And she said, thank you for showing me. That's okay. And so that's that time out where we go, okay, I made a mistake. It's okay. If your child is really sensitive and is upset when he makes a mistake, tell him it's okay. Point out your own mistakes, the silly things that happen in our lives that, again, if we model as adults, how we can react to this and say, it's okay, we can fix this. It will help them solve their problems, and it will help them get through school. It's really difficult to go through a school day if everything has to be perfect all the time. That's tough. If your child is a perfectionist, I often say, I'm sorry, that's really, really difficult. When I was a child, I was a perfectionist with my handwriting. I'm no longer that way, thank goodness. And this is back in the day when I wanted to communicate with my friends and my cousins. We often wrote letters to each other. This email thing didn't exist. And I remember writing out addresses on envelopes. And if my writing was messy, I would tear up the envelope and get another one. To the point where my parents are like, you're going through all the envelopes. I didn't react well to setbacks. And those were setbacks to me that were big deals. And I still remember that to this day. I was probably like 6 or 7 years old writing letters and thinking, this is the worst thing, I can't send this in the mail. If your child doesn't react well to setbacks, like I didn't get the choice I wanted in class, it can be as simple as we're giving out the little snacks and they're Belvita biscuits and I got blueberry and I wanted cinnamon. How do you react to setback? Well, maybe you'll get the one you wanted the next time. And these can be, serious things too. And I don't mean to make light of this, but keeping in mind your children are ages 3 to 5. Their problems that are little to us are big to them. So if they're crying and getting upset every single time there's a problem, it's really a difficult way to live. If you think about it, if every time something goes wrong in your life, you have a big emotional reaction, it's exhausting. So we try to help children react to setbacks. And the fourth thing I wanted to touch on for a minute was social interactions. And these are questions that we get a lot from parents. Who does my child play with? Do they play with children? Do they play near other children? Do they play around other children? Who do they like to play with? Are they accepted? And parents love to hear this, and we'd love to talk to parents about how do they interact? Do they have friends? And when they're 3 years old, especially our young threes, parallel play is very normal for them. They'll play in the sandbox. I'll be playing my thing, and he'll be playing his thing, and she'll be playing her thing, and they're all happy and they're playing together. But as they start to turn 3.5 and 4 and 4.5, and they want to play more socially, if they don't know how to mix with children, teachers help facilitate that. Miss Marino, who's out on our playground pretty much every single day, she's really a great go-to person if you just want to know who your child is playing with. And she'll intervene and help them find ways to talk about who we want to play with. So their feelings get hurt very easily. So ask if your child's feelings are really, really hurt. Chances are an adult on campus knows what happened that day. And typically there are things like, I'm not your friend. You're not coming to my birthday. Those are like the biggest insults. But sometimes if you break it down a little bit more, I'm not your friend means I want to play bikes today and you want to play this. So that doesn't mean I'm not your friend permanently. It just means I'm playing with somebody else. So how they use language is very different depending on their age and depending on their background with language. So where one child might be very, very much offended, other children are perfectly fine with it. So if they're not socially interacting and they're 4 and 5 years old, that's a red flag for us. That's a concern. But is there some kind of social anxiety going on? How can we facilitate this and how can we help this? And then finally, the other thing that we talk about that's not so quantifiable on a report card is stamina to make it through a day. Sometimes by the afternoon, when they get in the car, they're cranky and everything went wrong in the afternoon. But if you talk to the teacher they had in the morning, it was a very different experience. By the end of the day, they're tired. And sometimes, like next year when we reopen our early drop off, if your child gets dropped off early for school before classes start or before drop off, and then they're coming to an after school program, they're extremely exhausted, which is why we don't have quite so many opportunities for classes for them after school, because they're very small children. But stamina to make it through the morning. If there are children in class, and in my classroom, so we'll look at the clock, and I'm looking at the clock, say it's 9:30 right now. Some children are kind of done by 9:30, and then by this time of the year, it's the spring again. We love the spring, like wow, the beginning of the year. She could only make it till 9:30 before she lost it, and was too tired to do anything. And now, like wow, we're like 11 o'clock, and we're doing really well. They have to build stamina to be able to get through a school day. And so these are the things that teachers will talk to you about that can be hard to hear. And we know that they're hard to hear. And growth and change happens so quickly. So the conversation you had at parent conferences might be different in a 2-week follow-up. If there's something that was hard to hear, reach out to the teacher. How is this improving? What can we do at home? Communication with parents gives us so much incredible insight. I take notes when I meet with parents because I'm like, I will hear something and say, wow, this really stands out to me. This really struck me, what you just said about your child's interactions at home. This helps me to understand your child. And as a teacher, that's huge. If I can understand your child better, I can teach your child better. I can be a better partner with you. But we understand that things can be hard to hear, which is why one of the greatest joys that I have as an educator is I love to take that time just to, send a quick email to say something cute that happened, or, send the photograph. And personally, as a teacher, I like to do this, and I've done this for the last few years. When I have a funny conversation with a child, or I overhear a funny conversation between children, I'm that a little bit crazy teacher who will write out the conversation. There was one I wrote out recently, a child and I think I saw a parent come on this call, but this was just such a fun experience for me. This little boy was telling me all about money. He had $5, and that was like a big deal. And he's telling me what president's on the $5 bill and telling me what president is on the $20 bill. And then I just had to ask, like, we get out to recess, and I'm like, have you ever seen a $50 bill? And he's telling me he's on a $50 bill. And then this other boy says, well, I have a $70 bill. And the kid who knows all the money, he looks at him like, what's wrong with you? Just to tell parents those funny little moments. If you're not getting those, ask the teacher, because sometimes what you hear at a conference is you focus on what you heard that was hard to hear. But the things that are just hysterical, they make us laugh all day long. Those things, we want you to know those things. And if you feel like you're not getting enough of those moments, tell us. We want to share those. I mean, I'm telling you, this is every single day, the cute things that they do. The teachers who will, I'll get back into my office in the afternoon, and I'll get text messages from teachers of pictures that they took of kids doing just the funniest things, or the most kind things, the most wonderful things. So please make sure that you're having that communication with your children's teachers. Again, it can be hard to hear, but it can also give you some insight into what your child is doing in school. And sometimes children are very different at school versus at home. And just to kind of recap, just what I really want you to take away from today, nothing else. We're enjoying your kids in the springtime, and we wish you were here more to see them. But when we think about a temperature check, the report card is just that. It doesn't express all of the nuances of your child. And these teachers know the nuances of your child. Mrs. Turner, who, if you don't know her, she teaches our caterpillars. We were here pretty late yesterday just having a conversation about some of the children and what they can do now, and how much fun she's having this year because she's able to have these kids at such a wonderful time in the caterpillars. And for those who don't know, the caterpillars are our youngest group. So some of them are not even 4 years old yet. And it takes them a while to get into the swing of things, but we don't recognize them. Physically, they change so much, but also their whole psyche and emotional piece changes, and their executive function changes so much. And Mrs. Turner was just thrilled to tell me. So I know for a fact she knows the nuances of what your children are doing because we talk about these things. The rest of I can't read my next note of what I wanted to talk about, but I just kind of want to talk to you about some of the research that I read, I'm a little bit of a research geek, and there's a journal called Early Child Development and Care, and I've been reading a little bit about how some of these things that are less quantifiable on a report card are studied. And one article that struck me recently was just how researchers watch children in their spontaneous play. And that struck me as something I wanted to read because I listened to their conversations, I watched their spontaneous play, and I learned from it. And then come to find out that some PhD researchers have actually studied these topics using children's spontaneous play to see where they are. Particularly the one I was recently reading was about how they solve problems and how they can use toys and games to learn how to solve problems. And this is something, again, that I see every day because I see your children on the playground. But these are things that you can look for as parents. And I do want to, I'm just going to check the chat. If anyone had any questions, feel free to type that in the chat. If anyone wanted to have a conversation, I'll hang out a little bit. So toward the end of the year, you're just going to see the level of work that your children are doing increase. You're going to see the expectations increase, which you've seen steadily all year. And then I know a lot of families are planning for summer, so I did want to introduce, for those who don't know him, I have to change my Zoom settings so I can see everyone. We have summer camp program, and I know that's gone out to parents and it's gone out to families, but Mr. Orman, Michael Orman, who is our director of arts at the Meadows, he is spearheading that and is taking that on, and it's super exciting. So Mr. Orman, if you are on and can unmute yourself, I will find you. And I'll let him talk a little bit about that. And if you have questions, you feel free to ask.
Good morning. I just wanted to piggyback on what Ms. Carlson has mentioned. So I am, just to give you a little background, I am new to the Meadows this year. I come from a school in Dallas for the past 11 years, Green Hill School, where I ran a summer program as well, where we really focused on subject and content specific camps. So really giving your child and giving your family the option to sign up for camps that are specific to their interests, specific to their where they are right now in their development. And so I brought that here to the Meadows, and really the foundation was laid from our program, our Camp Mustang program prior to me coming, but we've now expanded it. So our options have grown and really honed in on the interests of children and what our children need right now, specifically in terms of where we are in terms of COVID and the safety of our students, and also their ability and their interest and what they need. And so what we've developed camps that it's an 8-week long camp starting in June 1. So right after school ends, you have the ability to go online, look at what our camps are. From there, you can sign up for a week at a time, a half day at a time. You can sign up for all 8 weeks. But we really did want to provide our families and our children with this opportunity that, it really is an extension of the school year in terms of enrichment, in terms of fun, in terms of growth. This is something that we want each child to leave here every day going, that was so much fun, and I have enjoyed myself, and I've learned so much in terms of hands-on play that they want to come back and they grow even more during the summer. So again, it's on our website, themeadows.org. You can go onto our Camp Mustang page and look, and kind of breaks down. And it really does start from the pre-K through 12. We offer upper school courses as well. But if you have any questions, and I can answer more specifically now, or if you want to give me a call or send me an email, I'd be more than happy to answer anything that you might have. I will tell you that it's a little bit of a passion project of mine, and I'm very excited. We have over 200 different camps this summer, so it is exciting to be at the Meadows right now. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Orman, and please feel free to reach out to Mr. Orman directly if anyone wants to put anything in the chat, or unmute yourself. This is a fun time to have a Zoom. The last one I did was on a webinar, and it was really awkward. You couldn't see anybody. It felt like less interactive, and I really would prefer to have people here. But if we don't have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself. And if not, I'll I'll just thank you again for coming today. Thank you for listening, and thank you for reaching out to teachers and having.
Hold on. Did somebody? I thought I saw a hand for it. No.
I was going to say something. Sarah, this is Elizabeth Britt. I just wanted to thank you guys for turning back on the seesaw share. I don't know if that was just for the Caterpillars class, but in March, we finally got the journals going, and we were able to see some photos of the kids. And I was just going to ask, I know it's hard, but the photos are so helpful. At recess is great, but if there's an opportunity to share more of what's happening in the classrooms, or even, during their outside, the yoga and tennis. When Henry's class was quarantined, Zoom was actually amazing because we got a chance to see what was happening. And it's been hard with all of us being, not able to go to the school to capture some of that. Sometimes Henry and I have a hard time communicating something exciting that's happened at school because of he has a hard time getting it out. But when I have just that little bit of, a photo, or when I have a chance to read the lesson plan that Sherry sends through on Zoom, it's enough for me to kind of solve it, and it solves a lot of frustration.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you, Mrs. Britt. I will pass that on to teachers, how popular it is. Some of the teachers are doing a lot more than others on Seesaw, trying to put pictures. All of the teachers are posting to Zoom. So what we recently opened, so those of you who aren't aware, I believe you received an email. Ms. Friedman just set up the whole social sharing section. And if you're not familiar with looking on the Seesaw, think Instagram, but it's private, but it shares so much more than that. So that's something that Ms. Marino is taking all the recess pictures, but point well taken, Mrs. Britt, sharing the little things, like when you can see the science experiment, or when you can see the things that they do. I know Mrs. Brown has been sending pictures individually to parents, like if somebody builds something really cool with blocks, we'd love to share that with you. And children who know that their teachers are doing this, they'll say, hey, can you take a picture? And they get it, that they send it out. No, I will let the teachers know how popular that is, because that's something, and just to let you all know, we've just renewed Seesaw for preschool through grade 2 on campus. It's been a highly successful tool. And if you have older children, you may have seen this, but if not, as they get older, Seesaw becomes something that children can manage, and they can actually post things like if they're doing a presentation in class, they can actually record that and share that with you in real time, or they can share that with you later. So I will definitely put that down as one of the things I'll talk to my teachers about. Especially your kid is little. Henry's little, and he tells you what his interpretation, but when you see what the teacher says and what Henry says, and you can put those things together.
Yeah, and just to touch on what you just said, I have a first grader and a second grader, and a lot of times during our pickup, while we're waiting for Henry, we'll pull up Seesaw and they'll show me what they've posted or what their teachers have posted that they did that day. And it would be great to have one, to have that kind of carry through. If Seesaw is what you guys are going to choose to use, or if there's another app, I didn't realize there was perhaps something on Instagram, but it's nice because then everybody is kind of on the same platform, and I feel like I can see, what's happening with him as well.
Yeah, and we chose that platform for a chunk of grade levels for that very reason, so that it's easier for parents, and then children can have the same thing and not learning another system. Yeah, and so I'll actually have a talk too with the teachers, and the 3-year-olds. It is a lot more difficult to find those moments to do that, but they also have so many fun things. So I really appreciate that. And so I will answer this chat specific. I'll contact the parent separately, specific to that child. So thank you for sharing that. Anyone else have anything you want to mention or bring up?
This is Jen Block.
Hi.
So more on what Elizabeth said, I was wondering, since as we go forward, especially like in May, a lot more of the parents will be fully vaccinated. And I was wondering if we're going to have the spring celebration, or there might be some sort of end of year thing where we could actually go into the school. I don't know if there would be vaccination rules or whatever, but do you think that would be possible, or is that just no?
That's $1 million question, and it's a great question. I'm really glad you brought that up. That's something that we put on our agenda. So every week, all of the student-facing leadership team of the school, we meet every week, and we have been discussing this. And then This afternoon, I'll meet with my colleagues who are the directors of the other buildings. We're trying to keep it consistent on campus. Mrs. Kennedy and I in the lower school were trying to figure out a way, how can we bring parents in for the celebrations before spring break? How can we bring parents in? The short answer to your question is, I don't know, I hope so. But I just want to let you know that that is something that is in the forefront of our minds, especially as a huge percentage of our staff is vaccinated and more parents. I mean, by the end of this week, both of my children will be fully vaccinated. So it's something that we are hoping to do, but I mean, I would love to make you a promise right now, but it would be an empty promise that I may not be able to keep. But I will tell you this, that it is on our agenda, and we are hopeful that we'll be able to find something better than Zoom, because Zoom is great for show and tell or a lot of things, but Zoom is really not so good for interactive participation with children, because you want to be there. But thank you, Mrs. Black, also a Caterpillar parent. We're hoping. Anyone else have any comments, questions? We love your children. We appreciate your time. I'll give you another quick view of the Miss Fong in the box. Many of your children saw this and it was quite hysterical. Mrs. Means actually took some video of children just kind of jumping and then laughing. So we love this. Again, we love the spring. We love our students and we really appreciate you as parents. Last year, I know if you had a child in preschool, you were basically teaching preschool because we were online. This year, we've been thrilled to welcome back almost all of our children who've been home for the year and, just onward. So thank you everyone for your participation and have a great day. And I'm going to get back to my class and we'll see you soon. Goodbye.